My name is Samantha Mitchell, but everyone calls me Sam. I'm 32 years old and every day for weeks, I eagerly checked my mailbox, expecting to find my brother Michael's wedding invitation. But it never came. Then the text from my mother arrived. Sorry dear, this event is adults only. Your brother thought it would be best if you weren't there. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. How could my own brother not want me at his wedding? If you've ever felt the sting of family rejection, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. Hit that like button, and subscribe because family wounds cut the deepest, but healing is possible. Michael and I were born 4 years apart, but despite the age gap, we were inseparable as children. He was the protective big brother who scared away playground bullies and taught me how to ride a bike without training wheels. I idolized him, collecting fallen maple leaves while he played Little League baseball, cheering louder than anyone when he got a hit. Our childhood home in suburban Boston was filled with laughter and the constant patter of our feet racing through hallways. Everything changed when I was 13 and Michael was 17. Our parents sat us down one Sunday evening after dinner, the remains of Mom's pot roast still on our plates. We've decided to get divorced, Dad said, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. Mom stared at her hands folded in her lap, silent tears trailing down her cheeks. Michael immediately stood up, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I'm living with Dad, he declared, not even looking in my direction. The decisiveness in his voice left no room for discussion. I remained frozen, unable to process the sudden fracturing of our family unit. When the divorce finalized 2 months later, our childhood home was sold, and we split into 2 households. I stayed with Mom in a modest 2-bedroom apartment close to my middle school, while Michael moved with Dad to a townhouse across town. The physical distance was only 3 miles, but emotionally it felt like continents separated us. I tried maintaining our relationship, calling him every few days and suggesting weekend hangouts. Most of my attempts were met with brief conversations and rain checks. I've got a big test to study for. Or Dad and I are going fishing, became his standard excuses. Gradually, our interactions dwindled to obligatory holiday gatherings and occasional family dinners that felt more like formal meetings than family reunions. By the time I started high school, Michael was away at college. I followed his life through Mom's updates and sparse text messages. He majored in business administration at a state university 3 hours away. During his 4 years there, I visited campus exactly twice, both times feeling like an intruder in his new life filled with fraternity brothers and study groups that didn't include his little sister. After college, Michael moved back to Boston, landing a job at a financial services firm. I was attending Boston University then, studying marketing, and hoped our proximity might rekindle our relationship. We met for coffee occasionally, but conversations remained surface level. His work, my classes, the weather, the Red Sox's season. The deeper connection we once shared seemed irretrievably lost. Then 3 years ago, Michael met Bethany at a colleague's wedding. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, beautiful, ambitious, and polished. The first time I met her at a family dinner, she greeted me warmly, complimenting my earrings and asking thoughtful questions about my marketing job. I immediately liked her and was thrilled to see Michael so happy. I threw myself into supporting their relationship. When Michael mentioned proposing, I helped him scout ring options and plan the perfect surprise engagement at Bethany's favorite restaurant. After she said yes, I organized a small celebration, inviting their closest friends to my apartment for champagne and desserts. Bethany hugged me that night, whispering, "I'm so happy to be getting a sister." Those words made me hopeful. For the first time in years, I felt like I might regain some semblance of family closeness through this new connection. But that hope gradually faded as months passed. It started subtly. Bethany began cutting our phone conversations short. "Sorry, I've got another call coming in." Or "Michael and I are heading out. Plans for lunch or shopping were canceled last minute." When we did meet, she seemed distracted, checking her phone frequently, her earlier warmth replaced with polite detachment. Michael's behavior changed too. He stopped returning my calls promptly, sometimes letting days pass before a brief text response. Family dinners became less frequent, and when they occurred, Michael and Bethany often arrived late and left early. Last Thanksgiving highlighted the growing tension. I'd brought homemade cranberry sauce and a photo album I'd discovered while cleaning my apartment. During dessert, I started sharing a childhood memory captured in one of the photos, Michael, and me building a snow fort during the blizzard of 2000. Remember how you insisted we needed a secret password to enter? I laughed, turning the album toward him. Michael glanced at the photo briefly. Vaguely, he said, not meeting my eyes. Later, while helping Mom with dishes, I overheard Bethany in the hallway telling Michael, "Your sister is just too much sometimes. Everything has to be about childhood memories." I froze, water dripping from the plate in my hands. Mom pretended not to hear, turning up the faucet unnecessarily. I finished the dishes in silence, a knot forming in my stomach that wouldn't dissolve for days. My single status versus their perfect relationship seemed to create an unspoken divide. At family gatherings, conversation inevitably turned to their wedding plans or house hunting, while questions about my life felt perfunctory. Still at the same company? Dating anyone? No one seemed genuinely interested in my promotion or the marketing campaign I'd successfully launched. Most painful was watching Mom grow closer to Bethany. They started having lunch dates and shopping trips that I only learned about through social media posts. When I mentioned feeling excluded to Mom, she dismissed my concerns. "Bethany's going to be family soon. I'm just getting to know my future daughter-in-law." The subtle allegiance shifts became increasingly obvious. If I disagreed with Michael about something, Mom would interject with, "Your brother knows what he's talking about, Sam." If Bethany canceled plans with me, Mom would explain, "She's very busy with work, you know. The pharmaceutical industry is demanding." By the time wedding planning was in full swing, I felt like an outsider looking in at my own family. Still, I clung to the belief that blood ties would ultimately prevail. Michael would want his only sibling at his wedding. How could he not? The invitation watch began 6 months before the wedding date. Each day after work, I checked my mailbox with growing anticipation, expecting to see the cream-colored envelope with calligraphy addressing that Bethany had mentioned during a family dinner. "The invitations are absolutely gorgeous," Mom had gushed. "The calligrapher did such beautiful work." As weeks passed without the invitation arriving, anxiety crept in. Maybe they had the wrong address? Perhaps it got lost in the mail? I checked my apartment building's main office to see if packages or mail had been misplaced. Nothing. For months before the wedding, I casually texted Michael, "Hey, just wondering when I should expect the wedding invitation? Want to make sure I request the time off work in advance." His response came hours later. "We're still finalizing the guest list. We'll let you know." The brevity and vagueness left me unsettled. I called Mom that evening trying to sound casual. "Have you received Michael and Bethany's wedding invitation yet?" I asked after chatting about her garden. "Oh yes, weeks ago. We've already RSVP'd," she said. "Haven't you gotten yours?" The confirmation that invitations had indeed gone out sent a chill through me. "No, not yet. I'm sure it's just delayed." "I'm sure that's it," she agreed, but her tone lacked conviction. More weeks passed. 3 months before the wedding, I spotted my cousin Ellie's Facebook post. "Can't wait for Michael and Bethany's big day. Just booked our hotel rooms." Comments from other relatives confirmed they'd all received their invitations. Everyone except me. The final confirmation came via text from Mom, after I directly asked her to find out what was happening. "Sorry dear, this event is adults only. Your brother thought it would be best if you weren't there." I stared at the message, reading it repeatedly as though the words might rearrange themselves into something less hurtful. Adults only? I was 32 years old. With shaking hands I called Michael, determined to hear the truth from him directly. When he answered, I skipped the pleasantries. "Mom says I'm not invited to your wedding because it's adults only. What's really going on, Michael?" Silence hung between us for several seconds before he sighed. "Look, Sam, we're trying to keep the wedding intimate." "Intimate? Then why is Cousin Ellie invited? We haven't seen her in 5 years. Why are your work colleagues invited? Why is everyone invited except your own sister?" "It's complicated," he said, his voice dropping. "Bethany thinks you'll draw too much attention. You know how you get at family gatherings, always bringing up old stories, making everything about the past. The truth hit me like a physical blow. So I'm excluded because your fiancé doesn't like me reminiscing about our childhood? It's not just that, Michael continued, sounding uncomfortable. Bethany wants her day to be perfect. Having you there would make her uncomfortable. And that's okay with you? I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Excluding your only sister is acceptable? I'm trying to start a new chapter. Sam, this wedding is about our future, not our past. After hanging up, I curled into a fetal position on my couch, physically ill from the rejection. My stomach churned with nausea. And despite exhaustion, sleep eluded me that night. Food lost all appeal, and I called in sick to work for 2 days, unable to compose myself enough to face colleagues. When I finally told my best friend Julia what happened, her outrage matched my pain. You need to confront them both, she insisted, pacing my living room. This is absolutely unacceptable. What would that accomplish? I asked, my voice hollow. You can't force people to want you at their wedding. That evening, unable to help myself, I scrolled through social media, finding more excited posts from relatives about the upcoming celebration. My cousin Jason shared that he'd received his invitation with a personalized note from the couple. Aunt Deborah posted about booking her flight from Chicago. Even my third-grade teacher, whom Michael had kept in touch with, commented about looking forward to the ceremony. Through various posts, I pieced together that the wedding would host over 200 guests at an upscale Boston hotel. So much for intimate. On the couple's online registry, I found request after request for expensive items: a $500 blender, crystal wine glasses, a full set of designer luggage. The registry's welcome message read, "We're so excited to celebrate with our loved ones." The irony wasn't lost on me. The hardest part was responding to friends who innocently asked about my brother's wedding plans. Are you a bridesmaid? Need a +1? Each question required me to explain my exclusion, watching their expressions shift from confusion to pity. He didn't invite you? His own sister? Their disbelief only confirmed the abnormality of the situation. 5 days after learning the truth, I broke down in the shower, hot water mixing with tears as I finally allowed myself to sob uncontrollably. All the emotions I'd been suppressing, anger, betrayal, humiliation, grief, poured out in gut-wrenching cries that left me gasping for breath. That night, dark thoughts circled like vultures. What was so fundamentally wrong with me that my own brother would exclude me from one of the most important days of his life? Was I truly so difficult, so embarrassing, so unwanted? The questions haunted me, breeding insecurities I thought I'd outgrown years ago. The exclusion reopened childhood wounds I'd thought long healed. The feeling of abandonment when Michael chose Dad after the divorce, the gradual distancing during his college years, the polite but empty interactions of our adult relationship. This wedding rejection wasn't an isolated incident, but the culmination of a long, slow disconnection from the person who once knew me better than anyone. I woke the morning after my shower breakdown with swollen eyes and a strange sense of calm. The worst had happened. I'd been explicitly rejected by my brother. And somehow I was still breathing, still existing. The realization brought an odd clarity. The doorbell rang around 10. Julia stood there holding 2 large coffees and a paper bag of pastries. I took the morning off, she announced, brushing past me into the apartment. We need a plan. I accepted the coffee gratefully. A plan for what? For wedding weekend, she said, pulling out her iPad. You're not going to sit home alone feeling sorry for yourself while they're celebrating without you. What else would I do? I asked. Go somewhere amazing, Julia said, opening a travel website. Take a trip you've always wanted. Show yourself that you deserve joy even when others try to exclude you from theirs. I shook my head. Won't that look petty? Like I'm trying to compete with the wedding. Julia's expression softened. This isn't about them, Sam. It's about you choosing self-care instead of self-pity. It's about refusing to let their rejection define your worth. Her words resonated more than I wanted to admit. We spent the next hour browsing destinations, European cities, Caribbean islands, South American adventures. Nothing felt right until Julia suggested Hawaii. You've always wanted to go, she reminded me. Remember in college when you had that Hawaii screensaver and said you'd go there someday? Hawaii. The islands had occupied my travel dreams for years, but I'd always found reasons to postpone the trip. Too expensive, too far, too difficult to plan alone. Now, scrolling through images of turquoise waters and volcanic landscapes, something clicked into place. I have $6,000 saved, I admitted. I was going to use part of it for Michael and Bethany's wedding gift. Julia raised an eyebrow. You were planning to give them a generous gift after they excluded you? Put that way, it did sound ridiculous. Old habits, I shrugged. But you're right. That money could fund an amazing Hawaiian trip instead. Over the next few days, planning the trip became my salvation. I researched islands, ultimately choosing Maui for its perfect balance of relaxation and adventure. I found a beachfront resort with an ocean view room, slightly above my budget but worth the splurge. The round-trip flights were expensive but not prohibitive. At work, I requested 2 weeks off, 1 week for the trip, and an additional week to decompress afterward. My boss, Lauren, looked surprised at the sudden request. 2 weeks is a long time for such short notice, Sam. Is everything okay? Something about her genuine concern broke through my professional veneer. I explained the situation in brief, unemotional terms. Lauren's face softened. Take the time. You've accumulated plenty of vacation days, and the Anderson campaign just wrapped up successfully. Your team can handle things while you're gone. Her simple kindness nearly undid me. The next weekend, Julia accompanied me shopping for vacation essentials. Sundresses, sandals, beach cover-ups, sunscreen. For a few hours, surrounded by tropical prints and summer clothes, I felt genuinely excited. The trip was becoming real, a positive focus amidst the hurt. That evening, Mom called. I spoke with Michael today, she began without preamble. He's upset that you're planning to be away during the wedding. The irony was so absurd I laughed. He excluded me from the wedding, and now he's upset I'm not sitting at home alone that weekend. He says you're making a statement by leaving town, Mom continued. Couldn't you reconsider? Maybe you could attend just the reception? I'm sure we could work something out. The wee stung Mom aligning herself with Michael and Bethany against me. There's nothing to work out, Mom. I wasn't invited. I'm taking a vacation instead. That's it. You're being stubborn, she said, disappointment evident in her voice. This is his wedding day. Can't you put your feelings aside for your brother's happiness? Apparently, my brother's happiness specifically requires my absence, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. I'm simply respecting his wishes. After hanging up, I nearly canceled the Hawaii reservations. Was I being petty? Causing unnecessary family drama? The doubt crept in, threatening to unravel my newfound resolve. Then Julia texted a photo of a Hawaiian sunset with the message, "This is where you'll be instead of crying in a bathroom at a wedding you weren't wanted at. Stay strong." Her blunt perspective reset my thinking. This trip wasn't about spite. It was about choosing myself when others wouldn't. The week before departure was a flurry of preparations, ensuring work projects were transitioned, arranging for a neighbor to water my plants, packing and repacking my suitcase to perfect the balance of comfort and style. Each preparation step strengthened my commitment to the journey. The night before my flight, Michael called. Seeing his name on my screen sent my heart racing. "So you're really going to Hawaii instead of finding a way to be at my wedding?" he asked. Skipping hello. "I'm taking a vacation, yes," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. It seemed the best use of time since I wasn't invited to your wedding. "You're making this very difficult for everyone," he said. "Mom's upset, Dad's disappointed. Bethany thinks you're being intentionally dramatic." Something snapped inside me. Difficult for everyone? You excluded me from your wedding, your only sister. And I'm supposed to worry about how my vacation affects you? I'm not the one who rejected family, Michael. Bethany is going to be my family now, he said quietly. Her comfort has to come first. And my feelings don't matter at all, I stated, not a question but a realization. You've always been emotional, Sam. This reaction just proves Bethany's point. I closed my eyes, recognizing this conversation was going nowhere. I hope you have a beautiful wedding, Michael. I really do. But I'm going to Hawaii, and I'm going to enjoy every minute of it. After hanging up, I finished packing with renewed determination. adding my passport and boarding pass to my carry-on bag. The confrontation with Michael had crystallized something important. This trip wasn't just an escape from pain. It was a declaration of self-worth. If my brother could choose his fiancée's comfort over my inclusion, I could choose my healing over his approval. The morning of my departure arrived with unexpected clarity. As the plane taxied down the runway, I felt the physical sensation of leaving troubles behind. A lightness in my chest that had been absent for weeks. Watching Boston shrink beneath me, I allowed myself a small smile. For the next 7 days I would be unreachable, unaccountable to anyone but myself. The flight was long, nearly 12 hours including the layover in Los Angeles, but I welcomed the forced stillness. I read a novel I'd been meaning to start for months, watched 2 movies without checking my phone, and even chatted with the friendly older couple seated beside me. They were celebrating their 40th anniversary with their first trip to Hawaii. "Traveling alone?" the woman asked kindly. "Yes," I replied, expecting pity but finding none in her expression. "Good for you," she said. "Some of my best trips were solo adventures before I met Harold. You notice more when you're not busy talking to someone else." Her words stayed with me as we began our descent into Maui, the island revealing itself through wisps of cloud. A lush green jewel surrounded by endless blue. The beauty was so overwhelming it momentarily took my breath away. Stepping off the plane, I was immediately enveloped in warm, fragrant air. Even the airport felt different, open-air walkways adorned with tropical plants, gentle breezes carrying the scent of plumeria. Collecting my luggage and finding the shuttle to my resort, I felt like I'd entered another world entirely. The oceanfront Royal Lahaina Resort exceeded my expectations. My room featured a private balcony overlooking the Pacific, the sound of waves a constant gentle soundtrack. After check-in I stepped onto that balcony, watching the late afternoon sun cast golden light across the water, and felt a surge of gratitude for this moment. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. "Landed safely? Resort as amazing as the pictures." I sent her a quick balcony selfie with the ocean behind me. "Beyond amazing. Thank you for pushing me to do this. Enjoy every second. You deserve this," she replied. Taking a deep breath, I powered off my phone. For at least the next 24 hours, I would be completely disconnected from Boston, from family drama, from the wedding that was now just 3 days away. That first evening I walked along Ka Napoli Beach as the sun set, my bare feet sinking into cool sand. The horizon blazed orange and pink, colors so vibrant they seemed artificially enhanced. Other beachgoers, couples, families, fellow solo travelers, dotted the shore, all of us united in silent appreciation of nature's spectacle. As I turned to head back toward the resort, a staff member setting up tiki torches along the beach path smiled at me. His name tag read Kai. "First night on the island?" he asked. I nodded, surprised he could tell. "You have that look," he explained, "like you can't quite believe you're here." He recommended a small restaurant just down the beach, promising the best fresh poke on the island. "Much better than the resort food, though don't tell my manager I said that," he added with a wink. Following his advice, I found the open-air restaurant nestled among palm trees. The host seated me at a small table overlooking the water, now darkened to midnight blue with the moon creating a silver pathway across its surface. I ordered the poke bowl with brown rice and fresh mango, savoring flavors more vibrant than anything I'd tasted before. Returning to my room, I realized with a start that in Boston, the wedding day had technically begun. The time difference meant it was already past midnight there. Michael and Bethany's wedding was now today on the East Coast. I glanced at my silent phone, tempted momentarily to check for messages. Instead, I placed it in the room safe and stepped back onto the balcony, letting the sound of waves wash away the impulse. Whatever was happening 3,000 miles away couldn't touch me here. Despite physical exhaustion from travel, sleep proved elusive that first night. My body was still on Boston time, and my mind refused to quiet completely. I journaled by the soft light of the bedside lamp, pouring out conflicted emotions, the residual hurt alongside the genuine wonder of being in Hawaii. "I'm still sad about Michael," I wrote, "but for the first time I'm equally sad for him for what he's missing by shutting me out. Maybe that's progress." I finally fell asleep around 3 a.m., waking just a few hours later as golden sunlight streamed through a gap in the curtains. Rather than fighting the early hour, I changed into yoga clothes and headed to the beach, where I discovered a sunrise yoga class just beginning on a grassy area overlooking the ocean. The instructor welcomed me warmly, helping me adjust my mat between other early risers. As we moved through gentle stretches, the sun climbed higher, warming my skin. For those 30 minutes, my mind focused solely on breath and movement, a respite from weeks of emotional turmoil. Breakfast afterward was a solitary affair at the resort's open-air restaurant. Sipping Kona coffee and eating tropical fruit, I observed other guests, honeymooning couples feeding each other bites of pancake, families corralling excited children, friends planning their day's adventures. For a brief moment, loneliness threatened to overshadow the beauty surrounding me. Returning to my room, I flipped through the resort's activity guide, determined to keep moving forward. A guided hiking tour to a waterfall caught my attention, moderate difficulty, 3 hours round trip, transportation included. I booked it impulsively for that morning, giving myself just enough time to change and apply sunscreen before meeting the tour van. The hiking group proved surprisingly diverse. A retired couple from Seattle, a family with teenage daughters from Chicago, a solo male traveler from Australia, and me. Our guide, Leilani, was a native Hawaiian woman in her 50s with an encyclopedic knowledge of the island's ecology and a warm maternal presence. As our van wound through increasingly lush terrain, Leilani shared stories of growing up on Maui, pointing out plants and landmarks significant to Hawaiian culture. When she asked what brought each of us to the island, I gave a simplified answer: needed a break from work. But something in her gentle gaze suggested she sensed the half-truth. The hike itself proved more challenging than I'd anticipated. The trail ascended steadily through dense rainforest, crossing streams on slippery rocks, requiring full attention to navigate safely. The physical exertion became a welcome distraction, focusing my mind on immediate concerns: foot placement, balance, hydration, rather than emotional wounds. 2 hours in, we heard it before seeing it, the unmistakable sound of rushing water growing louder with each step. Rounding a final bend in the trail, the waterfall revealed itself. A 70-foot cascade of white water plunging into a crystal-clear pool surrounded by ferns and flowering plants. The sight was so unexpectedly beautiful that tears sprang to my eyes. I quickly wiped them away, hoping no one noticed, but Leilani appeared beside me. "Sometimes beauty hurts a little," she said quietly, "especially when our hearts are already tender." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. As the others eagerly took photos and some brave souls entered the cool water, Leilani and I sat on a smooth boulder slightly apart from the group. In Hawaiian culture, water represents life, but also emotional cleansing, she explained. Ancient Hawaiians believed waterfalls had special mana, spiritual power, to wash away what no longer serves us. I could use some of that, I admitted. Leilani smiled. Our word ohana means family, but not just blood relatives. Ohana includes all who are chosen and loved. Sometimes the family we build matters more than the family we're born into. Her words resonated deeply. I pulled out my phone to photograph the waterfall, noticing with surprise that I hadn't checked for wedding updates once since arriving. Instead of opening social media, I focused on capturing the perfect shot of sunlight creating rainbows in the mist, my first genuine Hawaii memory. By the time we returned to the resort late that afternoon, I felt different, tired physically but lighter emotionally. In my room, I showered away the day's sweat and dirt, then stood on the balcony watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in impossible colors once again. For the first time since the wedding invitation debacle began, I felt something close to peace. I was thousands of miles from where my brother was probably now rehearsing his wedding ceremony, and somehow that was exactly where I needed to be. My third day in Hawaii began with a decision made over breakfast. I would take surfing lessons. The resort offered beginners classes each morning, and despite having never attempted the sport, something about the challenge appealed to me. Perhaps it was watching the graceful surfers from my balcony, or maybe it was simply the desire to try something completely new and unexpected. After finishing my papaya and coffee, I signed up at the activities desk where the cheerful attendant assured me, "Everyone falls a lot their first time. That's half the fun. An hour later, I stood on the beach alongside 5 other novices, listening to our instructor Dylan explain surfing basics. He was in his early 30s with sun-bleached hair, and the perpetually relaxed demeanor I was beginning to recognize as characteristic of island locals. Surfing isn't about conquering the ocean, he told us as we practiced pop-up movements on our boards in the sand. It's about working with it, feeling its rhythm, becoming part of something bigger than yourself. When we finally entered the water, the reality proved much harder than the theory. My first attempt ended with me tumbling unceremoniously as the wave rolled past. The second and third attempts weren't much better. Salt water burned my eyes and nose, and my arms ached from paddling. After my 5th fall, I sat on my board catching my breath, wondering if I should just quit. Dylan paddled over, his expression encouraging rather than judgmental. "You're thinking too much," he said. "Your body knows what to do if you let it." "My body definitely doesn't know how to surf," I laughed. "Sure it does. Your body knows how to find balance, how to flow with movement. You just need to trust it." He pointed to an approaching wave. "This one's yours. Remember, feel, don't think." Something about his confidence transferred to me. As the wave approached, I paddled with renewed determination. When I felt the board catch the wave's energy, I pushed up just as we'd practiced, focusing on feeling rather than analyzing. For 5 glorious seconds I stood balanced on the board, riding the wave toward shore, before tumbling into the water once again. But those 5 seconds changed everything. The sensation of gliding on water, propelled by natural energy, created a joy so pure and immediate that I emerged from the water laughing like a child. "That's it," Dylan called, giving me a high five as I waded back out. "That's exactly it." By the end of the 2-hour lesson, I'd managed to stand several more times, each success building my confidence. As we returned our boards to the beach hut, Dylan mentioned a bonfire gathering that evening. "Some locals, some travelers, good music, good people," he explained. "Down the beach past the rocky point, starts around sunset. You should come." My immediate instinct was to decline. I'd come to Hawaii for solitude, not socializing. But something about the day's experience had shifted my perspective. "Maybe I will," I replied, surprising myself. Back in my room, I showered away the salt water and checked my phone for the first time that day. The wedding was now fully underway in Boston. A missed call notification from Mom showed on my screen but no voicemail. I considered returning the call, then decided against it. Whatever she wanted to tell me. Updates about the ceremony, last-minute guilt trips, well-intentioned but painful wedding details could wait. After a quiet dinner at the resort restaurant, I found myself walking down the beach as twilight descended, following the faint sound of guitar music and glimpsing the orange glow of a fire in the distance. Part of me still questioned the wisdom of joining a gathering of strangers, but the larger part recognized that isolation, while initially healing, could eventually become another form of prison. The bonfire group was smaller than I'd expected, perhaps 15 people seated on driftwood logs or beach blankets around a well-contained fire pit. Dylan spotted me hovering at the perimeter and waved me over, introducing me to those nearby. A Canadian couple on their honeymoon, a solo traveler from Germany, 2 sisters from Oregon, and several locals including the fire's host, a Hawaiian man named Keone who welcomed me with genuine warmth. Someone passed me a bottle of local beer, and conversations flowed easily around topics of island recommendations, travel mishaps, and cultural differences. When a lull in discussion came, Keone encouraged people to share stories. Why you're here, what you're seeking, what you're leaving behind, whatever story wants to be told, he explained. Sharing stories around fire is one of humanity's oldest traditions. Various travelers offered their tales, the Canadian couple's long-distance relationship finally culminating in marriage, the German man's journey of self-discovery after losing his job, the Oregon sisters' reunion trip after years living in different countries. When attention turned to me, I hesitated, then offered a simplified version of my truth. "My brother is getting married today in Boston. I wasn't invited, so I came to Hawaii instead." I expected awkward silence or prying questions, but instead received understanding nods and subtle expressions of support. One woman squeezed my hand briefly, Another raised her beer bottle in a silent toast. A woman named Rachel, about my age with curly hair and kind eyes, shared next. 3 years ago, my family stopped speaking to me when I came out. This is my first real vacation since then. Celebrating building a new life without them. Her vulnerability created an opening, and after the formal story sharing ended and people broke into smaller conversations, Rachel and I found ourselves talking by the edge of the fire. She understood family estrangement in ways few others in my life could, offering perspectives without judgment or platitudes. The hardest part was letting go of the fantasy that they'd suddenly change and everything would be fixed, she admitted. Once I accepted that this was the reality, I could start building a life that didn't depend on their approval. We exchanged phone numbers before the evening ended, making tentative plans to meet for a beach day later in the week, only to find that what I really needed was understanding from someone who'd walked a similar path. The next morning, my 4th day in Hawaii, I woke without immediately reaching for my phone. A small but significant change from my normal routine. When I finally did check it, multiple notifications awaited. A message from Julia with screenshots of wedding photos already appearing on social media. 2 more missed calls from Mom, and a text from Michael simply stating, "Missed you today." The wedding picture showed my brother beaming in his tuxedo, Bethany radiant in a lace gown, my parents proudly flanking them in formal attire. Extended family members I rarely saw occupied tables at an elegantly decorated reception. Everyone looked happy, celebratory, complete. Without me, a familiar ache bloomed in my chest. But it felt different now. A dull throb rather than the sharp agony of weeks past. I could acknowledge the pain without being consumed by it. Rather than dwelling on what I'd missed, I texted Julia. "On my way to island hopping tour. Tell me about your weekend later." Then I silenced my phone and headed to the marina where I'd booked a boat trip to neighboring Lanai. The day proved to be exactly what I needed. 6 hours on a catamaran with a small group of fellow travelers, spotting spinner dolphins that leaped playfully alongside the boat, snorkeling in a protected cove where tropical fish in impossible colors darted among coral formations. Underwater, in the weightless blue world where sound was reduced to the rhythm of my own breathing, the wedding and all its associated hurt seemed to belong to another lifetime. During the boat's return journey, I found myself sitting near Rachel and 2 others from the previous night's bonfire, Marco from Italy and Jen from Seattle. What began as casual conversation about our snorkeling experiences evolved into lunch plans at a local spot Rachel recommended. Over fresh fish tacos and cold drinks, our small group swapped travel stories and life experiences. For those few hours, I wasn't Sam the excluded sister, but simply Sam from Boston on her first Hawaii trip. The distinction felt liberating. That evening, Julia and I finally connected by phone. She gave me the wedding details I'd been both dreading and curiosity about. The ceremony readings, the first dance song, the cake flavor, which relatives got embarrassingly drunk at the reception. "Your mom asked about you," Julia mentioned. "Wanted to know if I'd heard from you." "What did you say?" "That you were having an amazing time in Hawaii, and would call when you were ready." I smiled, grateful for her loyalty. "The weird thing is," I admitted, "I actually am having an amazing time. Not just pretending to for social media or to save face." "I can hear it in your voice," Julia said. "You sound more like yourself than you have in months." After we hung up, I realized she was right. The wedding had happened without me, and somehow I was still whole. The exclusion had hurt deeply, still hurt, but it hadn't defined or destroyed me. That knowledge felt like reclaiming a power I hadn't realized I'd surrendered. My 5th morning in Hawaii began with an unexpected text from my father. "Your brother's wedding was beautiful, but it didn't feel right without you there. I should have said something sooner about the invitation situation. I'm sorry, Sam." His acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. Dad had always been the quieter parent, less likely to intervene in conflicts or express emotional nuance. This simple message represented a significant effort on his part. I texted back, "Thank you for saying that, Dad. It means a lot. I'm doing okay here. Hawaii is helping me get perspective." We exchanged a few more messages. Nothing earth-shattering, but the conversation felt like a small bridge being rebuilt across damaged terrain. He promised to call when I returned to Boston, and for the first time in years, I looked forward to a one-on-one conversation with my father. After a light breakfast on my balcony, I headed to the resort's beachside restaurant for coffee refill, planning to spend the morning reading on the beach. As I waited at the counter, a familiar voice behind me said, "The snorkeler returns. How's the recovery going?" I turned to find Dylan, the surf instructor, coffee mug in hand, dressed in cargo shorts and a faded t-shirt rather than his teaching wetsuit. He looked different but still carried that easy, relaxed energy. "No major muscle complaints," I laughed, though I discovered parts of my back I didn't know could be sore. "First time surfing will do that." He nodded sympathetically. "Any plans for today?" When I mentioned my book on beach agenda, he hesitated, then said, "I'm actually heading up to my family's place in upcountry Maui today. My day off. My grandmother makes traditional Hawaiian lunch on Thursdays. It's nothing fancy, but if you wanted to see something beyond the resort areas." He trailed off, looking suddenly uncertain. The old Sam would have politely declined, suspicious of unexpected invitations and protective of personal boundaries. But Hawaii Sam, as I'd begun thinking of this evolving version of myself, recognized the genuine offer for what it was. "I'd like that," I said, "if you're sure it wouldn't be an imposition on your family." Dylan's relieved smile suggested he'd expected rejection. "No imposition. My grandmother loves feeding visitors. She says it's the Hawaiian way." An hour later, we were driving up winding roads in Dylan's well-worn Jeep, the air growing noticeably cooler as we climbed in elevation. The landscape transformed from coastal resort development to agricultural lands, coffee farms, tropical fruit orchards, and small ranches dotting the hillsides. Dylan pointed out native plants and historical sites as we drove, his knowledge reflecting deep connection to the island. His family's property sat on 3 acres of gently sloping land with views stretching all the way to the ocean. The modest house was surrounded by fruit trees and a substantial vegetable garden, where an elderly woman was collecting something in a basket. "Tutu," Dylan called as we parked. "I brought a visitor." His grandmother straightened, shading her eyes to look our way. Her face, deeply lined from decades of island sun, broke into a warm smile that immediately set me at ease. "Any friend of Dylan's is welcome here," she said, taking my hand in both of hers. "I'm Nalani, but everyone calls me Tutu." The next few hours were unlike anything I'd experienced before. Dylan gave me a tour of the property while Tutu finished preparing lunch. He showed me the mango and avocado trees his grandfather had planted decades ago, the traditional Hawaiian medicinal plants his grandmother still grew and used, and the small workshop where he shaped custom surfboards as a side business. Lunch was served on a covered lanai overlooking the valley. The food was simple but delicious: kalua pork, lomi salmon, fresh poi, and sweet potatoes. As we ate, Tutu asked about my home, my work, my impressions of Hawaii. Her questions were gentle but perceptive, drawing out stories I hadn't planned to share. Somehow, between the tropical breeze and her grandmotherly warmth, I found myself telling them about Michael and the wedding exclusion. Tutu listened without interruption, nodding occasionally, her eyes reflecting understanding rather than pity. When I finished, she said simply, "Family wounds cut the deepest because they strike where we most expect to be safe. But sometimes the cutting away of what was allows space for what could be." After lunch, Tutu taught me to weave lauhala, dried pandanus leaves, into a simple bracelet. As my fingers fumbled with the unfamiliar technique, she spoke about Hawaiian values, the importance of ohana, family, but also kuleana, responsibility, and pono, righteousness, balance. In the old ways, she explained, family wasn't just about blood. It was about who belonged together, who cared for each other. Sometimes the family we choose is more pono than the family we're born to. The parallels to my situation were obvious but offered without judgment or explicit advice. As we prepared to leave late that afternoon, Tutu pressed a small package wrapped in ti leaves into my hands. "Extra food for later," she insisted. Driving back toward the resort as sunset painted the sky, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. "Your grandmother is remarkable," I told Dylan. "Thank you for sharing your family with me today." "Tutu has that effect on people," he smiled. "She sees things others miss." Back at my room, I sat on the balcony watching stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. The contrast between the warm welcome I'd received from strangers today and the explicit rejection from my own brother couldn't have been starker. Yet strangely, I felt more compassion than bitterness toward Michael now, wondering what insecurities or pressures had led him to make choices that damaged our relationship. The next morning, I spotted a flyer at the resort activities desk about a beach cleanup volunteer opportunity. On impulse, I signed up and by 9 a.m., found myself among 20 volunteers collecting plastic debris and microplastics from a less tourist beach along the northern shore. The group leader, Alexandra, was a marine biologist with a local conservation organization. As we worked together sifting sand for tiny plastic fragments, she explained the devastating impact of ocean pollution on Hawaiian marine life. Her passion was contagious, transforming what could have been tedious work into meaningful action. Most visitors come to enjoy Hawaii's beauty, she said as we filled another bucket with collected trash. But you're helping preserve it. That makes you different. Her simple affirmation resonated deeply. Throughout my life, I'd often felt different in ways that seemed problematic, too emotional according to Michael, too attached to the past according to Bethany, too independent according to Mom. But here, being different was presented as valuable, even necessary. When Alexandra mentioned they were conducting a research boat trip the following day to monitor coral health and invited me to join, I accepted immediately. The opportunity to contribute to something larger than my personal concerns felt like exactly what I needed. That evening, Rachel texted asking if I wanted to join her for dinner. Over local seafood at a restaurant overlooking the harbor, we solidified a friendship that had begun at the bonfire, planning several activities for my remaining days on the island. Her easy acceptance and understanding created space for both serious conversations and genuine laughter, something I'd been sorely missing. Checking my phone before bed, I found a message from Michael. I hope you're enjoying Hawaii. Things felt strange without you here yesterday. When you're back, maybe we could talk. The message was far from the apology I deserved, but it acknowledged, however minimally, that my absence had been felt. A week ago, I might have responded with anger or hurt. Tonight, I simply wrote, Hawaii is incredible. I'm learning a lot about myself here. Yes, we can talk when I'm back. I hope the wedding was everything you wanted. The response felt neither bitter nor falsely cheerful, just honest. I was no longer defining myself primarily as Michael's excluded sister but as Sam, a woman discovering her own strength and building new connections. My 7th day in Hawaii began early on Alexandra's research boat, where I helped record data as the team monitored coral bleaching in key reef locations. Watching these scientists work, their dedication to preservation, their collaborative problem-solving approach, offered yet another perspective shift. My family drama, so all-consuming weeks ago, seemed smaller against the backdrop of ongoing environmental challenges requiring collective action. During a break, Alexandra explained how whale pods communicate across vast ocean distances, maintaining family connections despite physical separation. They're constantly calling to each other, she said. Their voices traveling for miles through water. Even when they can't see each other, they're connected. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. Perhaps family relationships could evolve and adapt rather than simply breaking. Perhaps distance, physical or emotional, didn't necessarily mean disconnection. That evening, the resort hosted a traditional luau. Rachel and Marco convinced me to attend, and soon I found myself learning basic hula steps alongside other tourists, laughing at my awkward attempts to coordinate hand and hip movements. The cultural immersion, traditional music, dance, and food created a celebratory atmosphere that proved surprisingly healing. For those few hours surrounded by new friends and embracing unfamiliar traditions, I felt genuinely happy. Not the defensive look how great I'm doing without you happiness I might have initially sought in planning this trip, but authentic joy rooted in present experience rather than past hurt. Later, alone on the moonlit beach, I waded into warm ocean water for a nighttime swim. Floating on my back, looking up at stars impossibly bright and numerous, I felt both infinitely small and completely at peace. Whatever happened with Michael and my family in the future, this moment was perfect in itself. A gift I'd never have received had I been included in the wedding. When Julia called afterward to check in, She immediately noticed the change in my voice. "You sound different," she said. "More like your old self, but, I don't know, more grounded somehow." "I feel different," I admitted. "Less fragile. Like I've remembered who I am apart from all the family stuff." "That's exactly what you needed," Julia said. "Not just distraction from the wedding, but rediscovery of yourself." As I fell asleep that night, I realized she was right. This trip, born from rejection, had become something far more valuable than mere escape. It had become a journey back to myself, the self that existed before and beyond family definitions and limitations. My final days in Hawaii passed in a blur of adventures with my newly formed circle of friends. Rachel and I hiked to hidden waterfalls, swam with sea turtles, and explored local markets. Dylan invited me for a sunset surf session where I managed to ride several waves successfully, each one building my confidence. Alexandra included me in another conservation project, tagging sea turtles for research. On my last evening, we gathered for a farewell dinner at a restaurant overlooking Lahaina Harbor. Contact information was exchanged, promises to stay connected made. Dylan and I had developed a connection that felt promising but undefined. Perhaps friendship, perhaps something more. We agreed to keep in touch without pressure or expectations. "Hawaii has a way of bringing people together when they need each other," he said as we watched the sunset paint the harbor gold. "Whatever happens next, I'm glad we met." As I packed my suitcase the night before departure, I was struck by how different I felt from the wounded woman who had arrived just 10 days earlier. My reflection in the mirror showed subtle changes: sun-kissed skin, hair lightened by salt water, eyes clearer and more peaceful. The physical transformation mirrored something deeper that had shifted within. The return flight to Boston gave me time to reflect on everything I'd experienced. While part of me dreaded re-entering the familiar world of family complications and workplace responsibilities, another part felt newly equipped to handle whatever awaited. Hawaii hadn't just been an escape, it had been a recalibration. Landing at Logan Airport in late afternoon, I felt the immediate contrast: humidity replaced by crisp autumn air, natural beauty overtaken by concrete and glass, island relaxation giving way to East Coast efficiency. Yet somehow, the transition felt less jarring than I'd anticipated. I carried something of Hawaii's peace within me. Julia waited in the arrivals area, wrapping me in a fierce hug before stepping back to examine me. "You look amazing," she declared. "Seriously. Whatever happened in Hawaii, bottle it and sell it." Over dinner at our favorite restaurant, I shared stories from the trip: the surfing triumphs and failures, the unexpected friendships, the conservation work, the transformative conversations with Tutu. Julia listened attentively, occasionally wiping away tears at particularly moving moments. "I've never seen you like this," she said finally. "It's like you found parts of yourself you didn't know were missing." Returning to my apartment felt surreal. Everything exactly as I'd left it, yet seeming slightly unfamiliar, as though I was viewing my life through new eyes. The space that had witnessed so many tears over the wedding exclusion now felt like simply a living space, no longer infused with painful memories. 3 days after my return, Michael texted asking to meet for coffee. I suggested a cafe equidistant between our homes, neutral territory where we could talk as equals rather than in any family member's domain. Arriving first, I chose a table by the window, watching fall leaves dance across the sidewalk. When Michael entered, he seemed momentarily taken aback by my appearance, perhaps expecting to find me diminished by exclusion rather than enhanced by adventure. "You look great," he said awkwardly after ordering his coffee. "Really tan." "Hawaii will do that," I replied, neither cold nor overly warm. "How was the honeymoon?" We exchanged surface pleasantries for several minutes before Michael finally broached the real subject. "About the wedding," he began, studying his coffee cup. "I know you were hurt by not being invited." "Yes, I was," I acknowledged simply. "Bethany and I thought it would be easier for everyone," he continued. "With the history between you two not being great, and the wedding already being so stressful." I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Michael, excluding your only sister from your wedding wasn't about making things easier. It was a choice that prioritized Bethany's comfort over our relationship. I understand making your fiancé happy, But the decision hurt me deeply and damaged our relationship. I need you to acknowledge that. Michael looked uncomfortable but nodded slowly. You're right. I made a choice that hurt you. I'm sorry for that, even if I still think it might have been complicated if you'd been there. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was more acknowledgement than I'd expected. We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering not just the wedding but years of drifting apart, the impact of our parents' divorce, and the gradual erosion of our once close relationship. No magic resolution emerged, but something had shifted. We agreed to try monthly dinners, just the two of us without Bethany or other family members. A small step toward rebuilding whatever connection might still be salvageable. The following weekend, I had dinner with my parents, another conversation that needed to happen. Mom struggled with my new assertiveness, still attempting to defend Michael's wedding decision and minimize my hurt. Families have to compromise sometimes, she insisted. Bethany is part of the family now. So am I replied evenly. And compromise doesn't mean one person sacrifices completely while others sacrifice nothing. Dad remained mostly quiet during this exchange, but as Mom cleared dessert plates, he said quietly, "You remind me of my sister Caroline. She never let anyone tell her who to be or how to live. I've always admired that about both of you." It was the first time he'd ever compared me to his favorite sister, and the unexpected compliment meant more than any apology could have. He was truly seeing me, perhaps for the first time in years. Back home that evening, I unpacked the last of my Hawaii souvenirs. A small handcrafted sea turtle sculpture from a local artist, shells collected during beach walks, the Lauhala bracelet Tutu had taught me to make. I arranged them on a previously empty wall shelf, creating a visual reminder of my journey. My phone chimed with a text from Dylan, checking how my re-entry to real life was going. Alexandra had emailed about volunteer opportunities with a Boston-based ocean conservation group, affiliated with her Hawaiian organization. Rachel had sent photos from a hike we'd taken together, suggesting a video call soon to stay connected. These new relationships, formed during a time of rejection, now enriched my life in unexpected ways. The universe, it seemed, had a strange way of providing exactly what was needed, even when it arrived in painful packaging. Opening my journal, I wrote, "The wedding invitation never came, but something better arrived instead. An invitation to rediscover myself beyond family definitions and limitations." Michael's rejection led me to Hawaii, which led me to new connections, new confidence, and new clarity. The pain was real, but so is this growth. Perhaps both were necessary parts of the same journey. I paused, considering the strange circular nature of it all. If I had been invited to the wedding, I would have attended dutifully, probably feeling awkward and marginal throughout. I would have missed Hawaii, missed meeting Dylan and Rachel and Alexandra, missed the conservation work that had sparked new interests, missed the conversations with Tutu that had shifted my perspective on family. Sometimes the biggest gifts arrive disguised as rejections. Sometimes being excluded from where you thought you belonged leads you exactly where you need to be. Life wouldn't be perfect moving forward. Family relationships would still require navigation and negotiation. But I was approaching them now from a position of self-knowledge and strength rather than desperate need for approval. That alone made all the difference. Looking at my reflection in the window, backlit by my apartment lights against the darkening Boston evening, I smiled at the woman I'd become. Someone who could face rejection and find renewal. Someone who could honor blood ties without being bound by them. Someone who could create belonging wherever she went. The wedding invitation never came. Thank goodness. If you've ever experienced family rejection or felt excluded from important events, I hope my story shows you that healing is possible in unexpected ways. Have you ever had a painful situation lead to something beautiful? Share your experience in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories about family, healing, and self-discovery, and share with someone who might need to hear that rejection doesn't define their worth. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Remember, sometimes the most painful no creates space for the most beautiful yes in your life.